Hey everyone, this is Curb Knight bringing you another standard match, and today we are finally continuing on with the set 10 content. With on the left we do have Gandiva, one of the best new decks that just came out in set 10. We're going to see how it fares off against myself playing the Messiah deck, which also came out the same day as set 10. So anyways, getting into the match, I am going to be starting off, which is definitely not what you want to be doing when you're playing any sort of deck set. You always want to be going second, but we're going to try and do our best to make it do. As you can see, I am playing the cycle card. I think it is somewhat beneficial just because, I mean, in Messiah, your soul is always going to be converted into draws, and what the cycle card essentially just lets you do is it converts it into that draw like one turn earlier, which you honestly really do need because, like, Messiah has 0 early game, as we're seeing here. I'm just going to be swinging and passing. There is also the fact that we're against Gandiva, and Gandiva is a deck that can easily retire a bunch of rear guards, so there's no reason for me to commit any rear guards to the field unless I really feel this is a matchup that I need to do that. But we are seeing me actually going OT to pass on both of these attacks, mostly because I want to wait until Gandiva reaches that grade 3 turn, so that if I'm at 0 damage, it'll be a lot easier to tank all of his attacks, whether that's 3 or 4 or 5 attacks. But once again, we are just swinging and passing here. Of course, drive checking into 2-0s. Unfortunately, hitting into a heal trigger. So because I didn't take any damage, that is going to let Gandiva heal back down just to 1. So a little bit of theoretical damage denial, but he is playing the Gandiva ride line, so it's not really going to matter that much. We see him using his own cycle card here, soul blasting 1 and drawing a card. Definitely, I think I've sung the praises of the cycle cards before in other fight videos, but honestly, they are just such really good cards. I'm so glad that we managed to get them. Or we managed to get them, but we finally got them in this set. So anyways, we are calling down that guy. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot of the Gandiva cards yet. I do have this pulled up. I guess that guy's called Ruganet. He counterblasts 1 and retires one of the opponent's rear guards. And then if you don't retire, you draw a card. And I believe you bind a card from your drop zone face down. As you can see, we do have that face down bind counter. Now Gandiva, since this is the first time we are featuring Gandiva, I guess I'll try and explain to the best of my ability. So Gandiva gives all your front row units an extra 2k for each face down card in your bind zone. We are seeing the grade 3 there, which allows you to on play soul blast 1, bind one of your other rear guards face down, and then retire one of your opponent's rear guards. And if you didn't retire, then I believe you draw a card and bind something from your drop zone face down. So essentially, just know that if you don't retire anything, then usually you're just going to be drawing a card and binding face down to make up for it. We are seeing the Gandiva skill there. It is actually able to be activated without any CB because of the grade 2 skill. When you ride over the Gandiva, it costs 1 counterblast less, and it basically checks top 5. You choose rear guards that have the same grade as the cards revealed by the top 5 and retire them. If you retire 1 or less, you draw a card and bind a card face down. And every single time you retire a rear guard, you do also get to bind a card from your drop zone face down. Anyways, you are seeing the one multi-attacker on the other side. When the Gandiva attacks, you can actually use the skill that grade 1, which allows you to bind it face down and counter charge, and the skill of the grade 2, which is when your Vanguard attacks, you can counter blast 1 and bind it face down in order to check the top 5 and call one of those units to the rear guard circle. So we are seeing the 4 attacks from Gandiva. Thankfully, I managed to hit a defensive trigger, so this isn't going to be as threatening as it potentially could be, but we did see Gandiva manage to hit that 5 bind zone threshold, which also is going to be giving Gandiva an extra critical, using the grade 3 skill there to bind a card, or Soul Blast 1, bind the other grade 3, and since we didn't bind anything, we bind the face down from the drop zone and draw a card as compensation. So now we do have the 8 face down bind zone, meaning that the front row is all getting plus 16. So even though this is Gandiva's first grade 3 turn, we're already hitting like way over Persona Ride numbers. So I am just going to be Elementarioing that, PGing it, because I do not want to take that 2 damage. I'll probably just take this last swing. Hopefully he doesn't hit into a critical trigger. We see a PG and a Persona Ride. So going to be swinging for a 29, which is a very good number. So even though that is a 15k guard, I think I'm just going to opt to take it. So Now, finally, that we're at my turn 4, I can finally start doing things. Start off by discarding that Astrolabe, which is your ideal stride fodder. Stride into the Amnesty Messiah, not Exilix, because you do actually need to be able to discard a Messiah for that. Anyways, going to be using the skill of Awakening Messiah to call itself out of Soul and Soul Charge, and then using the Stride skill to counterblast 1, lock the Awakening Messiah as well as that grade 3 rearguard, whose name is Sturgana or something. Anyways, as you can see, Gandiva is a deck that amasses a ton of hand, basically just so much hand. It's going to be really hard to break through, but Messiah is a deck set, so we can get stupidly high numbers, and maybe we can make a dent in that shield. It does also really hurt that Gandiva is only at 1, so a lot of this turn he can just tank. We do see me going for the Destiny Dealer there to kind of just thin out the deck, add the Messiah to my hand. And I am also thinking that next turn might be an Exilix turn, so I do kind of want to have it in preparation for that, because Exilix gives me a lot more pressure than just the normal Amnesty. We're going to be calling out Mikani getting an extra soul, and then of course calling out the Arrestor, so we do have our nice combo pieces. Unfortunately not all of them, but in any case I don't think I would go for like a full combo in this situation, because if you commit all of your combo pieces against Gandiva, it's all going to get retired and it's going to pretty much amount to nothing. Unfortunately hitting into a defensive there, which really sucks, but it is what it is and we're going to have to deal with it. So unlocking my 2 rearguards, the Awakening is going to give the Mikani an extra 10k, and then I'm going to choose to give the extra 10k from the Amnesty Messiah skill, because I unlock 2 cards, it gets an extra 10k. So now both of these attacks are going to actually be able to hit over a defensive. Drive check 1, cycle card, drive check 2, Arrestor, very good, and then drive check 3 is going to be that critical trigger. We're going to opt to give it to the Mikani, just because I think these numbers are fairly similar at the moment. Let's see, that Arrestor is at, I guess we'll see with the number once I swing 30, so it would have been a 40, so it doesn't make too much of a difference, because I think the other one is at 33. Yeah, 33, so it's effectively the same number. I think I would have rather just put that there. Yeah, I agree with my play. Okay. let's just pretend that was the correct play to do. Anyways, we are going to be swinging them Connie for a clean 33 at the Vanguard for 2 damage. Unfortunately, he is just going to be hit with a front trigger, which is a little unfortunate. I would have preferred to get a couple more cards. And phase the Arrestor is going to unlock, as well as the Stigna. And since 2 cards were unlocked, I do actually get to Soul Blast 2 and draw 2 cards. And do note that with Messiah, that your opponent's cards do unlock. They don't just get bound face up, so you actually do have the timing to draw off of them. Alright, so going to be going back to Gandiva. So we do still have a lot of cards in hand. We didn't really guard very much, starting off with that Persona Ride that we did see off of the drive check last turn. So this is looking to be a very strong turn. Going to be binding probably a ton of cards, as we see the Counter Charger. And I believe we probably have a lot more combo using the Gandiva skill. Basically, if you're ever playing against Gandiva, you should always expect that your entire board is going to be wiped out. We are seeing the 2 cards retired. And then obviously, because we retired 2 rear guards, Gandiva is going to let you bind 2 more cards from your drop zone face down. And I will say another strength of Gandiva, as we're seeing here, is he's binding 2 triggers. So because face down bind is not public knowledge, you actually can't rely on just counting the number of cards in their drop zone to know how many triggers there are out. At this moment, I think there's only like 4 triggers out of the deck, so I am very concerned that if Gandiva hits a critical, I'm going to be in not a huge amount of trouble, because I kind of bulked up. Triple drive and draw 2 at the end phase is pretty good, I will admit. But anyways, looks like we're using that grade 3 skill again to, I believe we called down like a heal trigger, and then we bound it with the grade 3 skill, and then just retiring the Awakening Messiah. So now we're in a pretty bad situation. Basically, for Messiah, this is not the greatest matchup. For 1, they retire all of your key pieces, and for 2, they wipe your entire board, meaning that you can't really use your stride skill, because locking a rearguard is part of the cost in order to lock one of the opponent's rearguards, and obviously if you don't have a board, then you can't really do that. But anyways, we are going into the massive power of Gandiva. This is only his turn 4, and he's already swinging for massive numbers, as we saw there. That was a 50k swing, going to be binding the counter charger, making this even more powerful. And then we're going to be using the counter charger as well to bind itself face down, giving us a total of 13 face down bound cards, and making that an extra, what is that, 26k to the front row, calling out that other guy. Probably, maybe we use the skill, but I don't think we really need to, because, you know, there's nothing to retire, and I guess it is basically counterblast 1 to bind 1 face down and draw a card. Ooh, looks like we are making a little bit of a mistake. I think we accidentally bound the face up bind zone, but I think we're going to be fixing that in just a moment, and it doesn't really matter because we do actually have the one ride deck Gandiva anyway, so we're just gonna go ahead and get that fixed up. There we go. It's just so funny how we have so many different zones now, especially if we're playing Gandiva. We have remove from game, we have face up bind, and we have face down bind. It's just kind of funny. Almost feels a little bit like Yu-Gi-Oh with all of our zones. But anyways, we are swinging for a very, very big number now that we have the 14 bound. That is a plus 28 to the entire front row. So honestly, like, playing Gandiva almost feels like playing crests, where you basically just get stupidly big numbers for no reason, just basically for doing what your deck is supposed to do. So I guess we're kind of in that era of the D series. Just get stupid big numbers for no reason. Anyways, so this is a very big swing, so obviously just going to be PGing it, discarding the cycle card, because at this moment it is basically a dead card and it doesn't do anything. But we're going to see the twin drive, which is honestly what I'm a little worried about. Hopefully we don't get a critical. That means I can at least tank one of these attacks, and I don't really have to worry about I only have to worry about guarding one of these numbers. So these numbers are exactly the same, if I recall. 38, and then that one is just 3k more at 41. So I'm thinking whether I want to commit the guard to this one. It is effectively the same amount of guard, right? It is a 40k guard for both of them. So I am realizing that if I take this damage and I manage to luck myself into a defensive, then I can save myself on about 5k shield, which in this deck is another piece. So I'm going to opt to just take this first attack, hope for that defensive trigger, and if I don't get it, I'm just going to be committing the same amount of cards that I would be if I had just guarded this first attack, even if it was smaller. So now I can just guard the 41, 50, 43, 58 without really worrying about it, just because it was a little bit of an awkward number. Did I do that math right? I think I did the math a little bit wrong there. Oh yes, I forgot to add Persona Ride. That's why it should have been 48 and 51. So my bad there. So yeah. Anyways, that's effectively why I did it. It basically just nullifies the Persona Ride. But you are seeing me here stride into that Exilix. I'm going to try and push for turn here because Exilix does give a ton of power and it allows you to multi-attack. So I'm going to be committing basically my entire hand at this point. All three of my pieces. I'm hoping to close it out here. Unfortunately, Gandiva does have a lot of cards in hand. So there is the potential that we can close this out depending on triggers, but at the very least, we are going to be destroying a lot of cards from his hand. And thankfully, especially with that Mikani, I do have a lot of cards in Soul. And since this is second stride turn, I am getting basically that Persona Ride onto my front row. So attacking the 33 is going to be a nice number, meaning that we have to commit the intercept along with the front trigger. Swing for another 33 at the Vanguard, choosing to take this one. In all honesty, I think you probably should have just taken the first one if you are going to be guarding this other one, since they are the same number. Using the Exilix skill to unlock 3 of my rear guards, and then since I unlock 3, I get to stand 3 rear guards, but obviously I only have to stand the Mikani. My front row gets another 10k thanks to the Exilix skill. My Vanguard gets an extra critical, and basically that's it. If it flips, then I would get another 5k from the crest, but unfortunately it does not. So these swings are going to be now at 43 each, apart from the triggers. So we are going to be swinging at with the Vanguard with a really big number, which I believe is 28, 38, 48. 48 53 because we do actually get plus 5k from the sacrifice Messiah. Gonna be hit with that PG that I believe we saw in the drive check. So drive checking 1 into a heal trigger. Very nice to see at this situation. Makes me really glad that I actually ended up going to 5, giving the extra power to the arrestor. Second check being a critical trigger. It's very difficult choice what I want to do here because I can stack all of my power on one unit, but I'm pretty sure he does have another perfect guard left for me. So I would kind of be wasting that, so I decided to split the power, swinging the 43 first, of course, because that is lethal. So this is going to force him to commit the PG, which I was pretty sure he had. So that means that I didn't waste the extra power. So I'm going to be swinging the 43. Now, I was thinking about whether I wanted to keep him at 1 face-up damage because he does... Oh, at this point, he only has 1 face-up damage left. So I was wondering, do I want to give him that extra damage? Because he does need that extra counterblast in order to use the multi-attacker. But I weighed the options that maybe he doesn't have it, and also that he probably has a counter charger anyway. So if I want to be in the best situation for next turn, I should probably just push him to 5 right now. The extra 1 counterblast is not really going to make that much of a difference. He would just be able to countercharge probably, and as we see, he does have the grade 1 countercharge, so giving him the 1 damage or not did not really matter as much. Of course, I am looking in a very dire situation. I do only have 6 cards left in hand. We are seeing the Gandiva skill, revealing and retiring the column of the Messiahs. And I do have 2 heal guardians that are, or heals that are the crit heals. So I could theoretically commit those 2 to the Vanguard swing. Thankfully, we didn't see the multi-attacker. So if I take one of these attacks, guard with the 2 heals on for the Vanguard swing, hope he doesn't get any triggers. I might actually have enough guard left in my hand to actually both survive as well as actually have enough cards in hand to stride next turn. Now, of course, my board is actually still full for some reason. We use a lot of our gas during those last 2 turns, so we don't really have as much retire right now. We did see the Gandiva retire the whole column, but of course I only have the 2 and the 1, so we can only retire basically half the board with the Gandiva. But we're gonna have to see how this goes. All right, so we are gonna start off with the swing for a casual 50k. Gosh, with that 16 in bind zone, that means the front row gets an extra 32k plus 18 with just the basic boost is that 50k. So I'm thinking the other swing is going to be like 5k smaller, right? It's going to be like 45 or something. So I'm just going to opt to take it. And I do hit into the over trigger, which kind of just guarantees the fact that I can live here. Unfortunately, we do get to use that Brachio skill since it did actually hit. It retires itself and lets you retire my Makani. And of course, he is going to be able to bind another card face down. And he is going to be swinging at the rear guard, which I found very odd because theoretically you could still hit OT. And that would allow you to swing at the Vanguard twice with 100 million still hitting. But he did, my opponent did tell me afterwards that he ended up drawing into the OT there. So that's why he opted to swing at the rear guard. But who knows? Honestly, I think you probably should just swung at the Vanguard anyway. Kind of put the fear of that OT in the head. And just swing at it with the rear. Maybe might have guarded it if he had swung Van at Van. But it's hard to tell. Anyways, I believe I top decks an Alter Ego Messiah there. And kind of just use it to stride into my Excellence again. So now things are turning... looking very good for me. I have full combo. I have the arrestor. I have the, what's that guy's name? Klein or something. And then I also have the sacrifice. So I'm going to be swinging at the Vanguard. I believe I made a mistake in my calculations here. This should be 18 plus 15, which is 18, 28, 33. I believe I told my opponent 38, but as we're going to be seeing here, that's not really going to matter because Klein is normally a 15k attacker, but you do actually have to have a locked card, and obviously as you can see when he attacks there is not a locked card. Theoretically it would have been the same. The only misplay I really made is I should have swung with the arrestor first because that would have been a 38, and then when I swing with the Klein it becomes a 38 anyway, so apologies for that little bit of a misplay. But theoretically, it was possible. But we do see Gandiva finally running out of cards, even though we do still have, what is that, like 7 cards in hand. These numbers at this point in Messiah, once Messiah gets its ball rolling, once you get to this point in the game, your numbers just start getting really, really big, and then you have just like a ton of multi-attack too. So we are just going to opt to take that 6 damage because there are still 3 more swings coming in after that are all going to be at a very similar number. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.